Hi guys, thanks for tuning in to another video on ForgottenWeapons.com. Today we're taking a look at a really cool old classic rifle. This is a Remington Model 8. This was a design by John Moses Browning, whom we all know and love. One of his very early commercial self-loading rifles. It's a classic piece. These were made under the name Model 8 and Model 81 until 1950. A total of about 120,000 of them were manufactured. This is a Model 8, which is the early version. This style was made until 1936. There were also a small number of them made by FN in Europe, about 5,000 total. So they were a lot more expensive in Europe, interestingly, than in the US. So this was always sold as kind of a high-end sportsman's rifle. Very reliable for use in places where you might run into dangerous game. The advertising from the time always shows hunters, running up against bears and wolves and all sorts of nastiness out in the field. They were available in 4 different calibers. They're all proprietary Remington calibers, 25, 30, 32, and 35. 35 Remington was the most popular. This particular gun is in 25 Remington, which actually was the least popular. Looking at it here, you'll recognize the safety lever from the AK-47. Whether Kalashnikov had actually seen one of these, there's no way to actually tell, but it's reasonably prudent to think that he probably had seen one somewhere. So just like on the AK, that prevents the trigger from being pulled and prevents the bolt from cycling. We're going to go ahead and do some disassembly on the Model 8. I do want to point out this is kind of a gnarly gun to take apart. There's a lot of bitty pieces, and it's not nearly so simple as the guns that would come later. In fact, I'm sure one of the questions that I would be getting on this gun is, if this is such a cool semi-auto rifle invented in 1906, why didn't the military use it? Well, when we get it halfway taken apart, you'll start to see this is not a gun that's ideal for trench warfare by any means. So, the first place we're going to start is actually taking off the barrel. What a lot of people don't realize, or at least some people, is that every Model 8 and 81 out there, and the two are basically identical, every single one of them is a takedown gun. So this little thumb screw at the front, it looks like a sling swivel. It's not. It's actually a thumb screw for taking off the forend. You'll notice if we look down here at the buttstock, there is no provision for a rear sling swivel. That's kind of a hint that this front one isn't meant to be a sling swivel. If you want to put a sling on, leave this alone, add another screw, because you don't want to booger this one out. So we unthread that, and then the forend just slides off, and underneath we have this pivoting lever. That is your screw. So we have a bolt here in the front. This is a little bit tedious to take off, but once that's undone, then I'm going to pull the bolt back just a little bit to unlock it, and then the barrel assembly comes right off. So this was a major point with the Model 8 and the Model 81. They disassembled very quickly and easily. You could pack them in a nice little case for travel out to wherever you're going to hunt. Frankly, it's still, I think, a really cool feature today. Now, the action on the Model 8 is a long recoil system, which is pretty unusual today. There are not very many guns, especially not very many successful guns, that use this sort of action. What long recoil means is that the bolt locks into the barrel, and when you fire, the two of them travel locked together all the way back the full length of the cartridge. At the end of travel here, the bolt locks in place, the barrel slides forward, and then when the barrel gets all the way forward, it trips a lever inside the receiver, which allows the bolt to come forward, chambers a new cartridge. We have some slow motion of that happening, which looks really slick. Now, to go on with disassembly, we're going to go ahead and, you can actually take the front off of this barrel jacket. It takes a special tool. You can see it's kind of a pair of slots in there that it's a special wrench to take that washer out. So we're going to leave that on. There is obviously a big recoil spring inside there for the barrel. But looking at the back end of the gun, the first thing we have to do is actually take off the buttstock. So you don't want to mess with this screw. You want to take off the back screw. I do want to make a shout out to Jim Green of Down East Gunsmithing, who has a channel on YouTube, who is one of my main sources for figuring out how to do this. He has an excellent video on disassembly of the Model 8. We take out that screw, pull off the buttstock, and set that aside. Now, like so many modern guns that have a recoil spring in the buttstock, the 8 does as well. So being a long recoil system, it needs 2 main springs, one for the barrel, and that's inside the barrel jacket. It needs a second spring for the bolt, which is in here. In fact, our next disassembly step is to take out the bolt spring. So there's a pin in this spring guide, which I'm going to tap out. There we go. Now this is of course under spring tension, so I'll hold it under the thumb. Something really funky here, at least on this particular gun, this spring guide is actually made out of wood. That's certainly not something you see anymore. So there's the recoil spring for our bolt. We have the little pin that holds it in place, so we'll set that aside. Now, the next thing we can do is take off the magazine and fire control group. To do that, we're going to start by taking out this screw in the very back. And then this pin, which I'm going to punch out from this side. So we want this pin kind of under the safety lever. Now, those are the 2 pieces that hold the trigger guard in, so I can pull that out and down. This gun's kind of grungy inside, I apologize, but if you look at that hammer, anyone who's looked inside a whole lot of more modern guns will recognize that fire control group. Just like an AK or an M1, the hammer spring is actually this long leaf. It's got a roller built into it right there. A nice smooth action. And then of course we've got our double hooks so that it disconnects like so. If you need to take the magazine out, you can do so at this point. It pushes out through this way, out the top. So I'm going to leave that in because it's pretty grungy and tight. So 5-round single stack magazine was standard on these. There were police versions, or there were companies out there that would retrofit factory Model 8s to a police configuration with an extended detachable magazine, and they did that by doing some work in here. Unfortunately, we don't have an example of that to look at right now, but now, let's see, we'll get the best view for you on this side. As you can see, there is a lot of stuff going on inside this receiver. So this sear right here is what controls the bolt. You can see it will snap down into the bolt right there, and then when the barrel is fully forward, that sear lifts up and spring pressure on the bolt pushes it forward, and then when the bolt's all the way forward, this comes up, allows you to fire. So in order to take the bolt out, we're going to take out this guy. You can also take out the other couple of pieces, this one, this sear, this spring, those can all come out. I'm not going to do that right now because we don't really need to. To take out the bolt, we have to go to the handle, pull this center pin up, and the handle slides out. Then, finally, at last, we can pull the bolt out. So here's our bolt mechanism. We have this pivoting tail, which may look familiar to folks with FALs. It is a 2-lug rotating bolt, as you can see right there. Kind of interesting, it doesn't actually rotate quite a full 90 degrees. It only goes that far. So, at rest, when it's vertical, the gun is unlocked. Now there's another trip right back here. That prevents the bolt from rotating, so we push that in. That allows the bolt to rotate. When it's fully rotated, we have a firing pin at the back, which is not spring-loaded, interestingly, and the firing pin can protrude and fire only when the bolt's fully rotated. The firing pin is simply not long enough to fire if the bolt's not locked. So another clever safety element there. If we look at the side of the bolt right here, you can see a curved cam track for the rotating. Then on the opposite side, there's another one. There are 2 pins that run in those cams. One of them is right here. The other is right there on the opposite side of the bolt. I'm not going to take this apart any further because it gets really kind of nightmarish at that point. But those 2 pins run in those 2 cams, rotate the bolt to operate the gun. So you can see we have a big old extractor here on top. It stays in position at the top of the bolt face. We have a ejector there, and that pretty much covers it for the bolt. Really an extremely clever, complicated, but clever piece of engineering by none other than our favorite John Browning. So reassembly is actually not all that difficult if you've managed to get it apart. We'll start by putting the bolt in, then I'm going to put the handle back in, so the handle slides in. Let's go ahead. Okay, I lied, it's a pain in the ass. There we go. We'll start by having the bolt locked. Now, the handle slides in. I need to lift up that center button. And I can slide the handle the rest of the way in. The handle locks in place. Go ahead and put the bolt forward. Now I need to put back in any of the interior pieces that I took out, which in my case, now you see why there was only one. So that goes back in. Now we need to put the recoil spring back in the gun. Put that in. Need to rotate it so that the pinhole is in line with the hole in the spring tube. Now we're going to put the magazine and trigger assembly on. This is kind of a nose in and pivot down operation. We'll then tap this pin into place. Buttstock can go on. Buttstock slides on. Now we have to replace the tang screw. Now we can put the barrel back on. Easiest to do that with the bolt locked back. So that slides into place. Takedown bolt goes forward. This is not your AR-15 that you can field strip in 10 seconds. Forearm goes on. Tighten the thumb screw. You don't want to over tighten it. It's just there to hold the forearm in place. Alright guys, we're back out here now. We've reassembled the Remington Model 8. We're going to put some rounds through it. So unfortunately I don't have any stripper clips. So I'm going to load this puppy by hand. It's a single stack magazine. It looks like it's detachable, but it's actually not. There's 2. This is definitely easier to load when you have a stripper clip to do it. All right, there we go. And we're all set. I really like the tang sight. That's a nice addition to this rifle. A lot of people say that the Model 8 recoils painfully. Now this one's only in 25 Remington, but recoil is really not a big deal on it. It's almost kind of soft. You get the recoil spread out a bit with the things moving in different timing. Now, I think I want to put a few more rounds through that. It's pretty neat. You get a real nice tactile feel from this rifle. You can actually feel the mass of everything coming back and then stopping and then cycling forward. It's, you know what? It's as cool as I figured an old John Browning design like this would be. All right, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. I know I really love this gun. I have one of these as well in 300 Savage. They're just really cool. There's 120,000 of these were originally made, and a lot of them are still out there in the forest every hunting season getting used. Really a testament to Browning's ability. Even as early as 1906, he was able to design a reliable, effective self-loading rifle like this. So, like I said, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Maybe you can go out and find yourself a nice Model 8 to pick up for your own collection. And tune back into ForgottenWeapons.com for more early self-loaders.